Welcome to the Strategy Sync YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like to hear new book summaries. Okay, so let's get into this deep dive. The subject today is something, well, it's a really universal experience, I think.
Absolutely. Everyone deals with this.
It's this thing that operates like a secret tax on your mental energy. We're talking, of course, about overthinking. We all know that feeling, that anxiety spiral, that just relentless mental clutter.
Right. It consumes all of your attention.
Yeah, and it paralyzes you, but it somehow feels incredibly urgent while, achieving absolutely nothing constructive.
It's the definition of spinning your wheels.
Exactly. So today we are diving deep into the practical wisdom from Nick Trenton's book, Stop Overthinking. 23 techniques to relieve stress, stop negative spirals, declutter your mind, and focus on the present.
And it's such an essential guide because for so many people, overthinking just feels like a personality trait, something you're just stuck with.
That's it. So our mission for you today is pretty simple. We are extracting the practical, the actionable techniques, and the fundamental mindset shifts that you need to get control over those runaway thoughts.
A roadmap, basically.
A step-by-step roadmap to some mental quiet.
Yeah.
And here's the core idea, the hook for the entire book, and frankly, the thing that surprised me the most. The shocking truth is that overthinking isn't actually about the thing you're thinking about.
That's the big reveal right at the start.
It's almost always a symptom, a visible consequence of a deeper underlying anxiety. So we're not trying to solve the thoughts. We're trying to treat the engine that's generating them.
And what's fascinating is how quickly something totally innocuous can just snowball into a full-blown mental crisis. The book starts with this great anecdote of a guy named James.
Right.
He's intelligent, maybe a little too self-aware, and let's say James notices a small health thing, maybe a weird-looking mole on his shoulder.
Okay, something we've all done. Found a weird spot and immediately gone to the worst-case scenario.
Exactly. Now, standard productive worry would mean what? You'd book a dermatologist appointment?
Call the doctor, get it checked out. Simple.
Yeah, right. But James, he doesn't stop there. He gets online, he starts researching, he's immediately alarmed, and he gets that initial spike of fear. But then this insidious second layer of thought begins, and this is the crucial step.
He starts thinking about his thinking, right? He catches himself.
Precisely. He stops worrying about the mole itself and instantly starts stressing about his thoughts about the mole. The subject has completely shifted.
Wow.
Now he's debating internal options for therapy, arguing with himself about whether his reaction is normal. He's analyzing his memories, his guesses, his fears. This layer of thought about thought, this is what the book calls meta-thought.
And that's the hallmark of the overthinking spiral.
That's it.
It's exhausting just listening to that process. He's gone from worrying about a physical thing, a mole, to worrying about his own sanity.
He starts questioning if he has generalized anxiety disorder or maybe a panic disorder or even deeper psychological issues. He compares himself to other people who seem so effortlessly relaxed.
Puts a magnifying glass on all his own flaws.
A huge one. He's agonizing over why he can't just let it go and be normal. And after all that mental torment, hours of it, he's no closer to dealing with the actual mole.
He's just exhausted and paralyzed.
That's it.
And that is the perfect illustration of how our cognitive instincts, which are supposed to help us analyze and solve problems, just get driven into complete overdrive. The result is this excessive, intrusive, unwanted mental activity, the worry, the rumination, the obsession that causes so much distress while accomplishing literally nothing.
It's entirely self-defeating.
So if that James story felt familiar, and I'm sure it did for a lot of you, let's drill down on how you can know for sure when you've crossed that line from, say, productive planning into harmful overthinking.
Yeah, the book gives a fantastic checklist of indicators, and just recognizing them is the first huge step toward taking back control.
The first one, and this really stood out to me as a classic sign, is a constant moment-to-moment consciousness of your own thoughts. You aren't just letting thoughts flow. You are constantly aware that you are thinking.
It's like you're watching a movie of your own brain.
Exactly. And you feel the need to narrate every single scene.
And that narration leads right into the second point, which is the engaging in meta-thought. That layer we just talked about where you're stressing about the fact that you're stressed or you're judging your own judgment.
That sounds like a massive energy sink.
It's a black hole for energy. Because you're no longer focused on the external problem, you're focused entirely on the quality of your internal response to the problem.
And if you're constantly watching and judging your own thoughts, you naturally start actively trying to control or steer them.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking stops feeling like this free, automatic process And it starts to feel like a fight, like a perpetual wrestling match in your own head.
And you try to push away those spontaneous or unwelcome thoughts, but what happens?
The very act of trying to suppress them just makes them stronger. It's a paradox, and it leads to so much more frustration.
That wrestling match is it's profoundly exhausting. And it means you're frequently questioning, doubting, or judging your thoughts.
You turn inward during a crisis.
Yes. You start to see your own mind as the source of the problem, rather than just seeing your thoughts as a reaction to something happening outside of you. The overthinker is hyper-focused on understanding the inner workings of their own mind, analyzing why they think what they think, which is, of course,
just more thinking.
Just more thinking. It's another layer on the pile.
And this internal friction, it has to have serious real-world consequences, right?
Oh, absolutely. It means you have immense trouble making decisions because every single option is subjected to this endless internal debate. And even when you finally do make a choice,
there's that doubt, that nagging feeling. You constantly revisit the choice, replaying old scenarios where there's nothing you can do anymore.
And that revisiting, that is rumination. It's one of the most debilitating parts of the spiral. Productive thought is forward-looking. It's about solving problems.
But rumination is?
Rumination is backward-looking. It focuses on things you can't change, and all it does is feed shame and regret.
So if we step back for a second and look at all of these symptoms, the meta-thought, the wrestling, the rumination, we have to come back to the central finding of the book, the thing that dictates the entire approach that follows.
Absolutely. We have to understand this critical distinction. The root causes of the overthinking are almost never the actual focus of the rumination.
James was worried about a mole.
Right. But his thought cascade was about his sanity, his control, his self-worth, his future. The mole was just a simple trigger. The cascade of thoughts was the effect.
So if you try to solve the fleeting thought, the fear about the mole, or the fear about an upcoming presentation,
another one will just pop right up to take its place because the engine is still running. So the approach the book champions, and that we're going to explore, is to treat the overthinking as the effect. That's the how. But the underlying fundamental root cause is anxiety. That's the why.
If we want to achieve any kind of lasting mental quiet, we have to tackle that anxiety engine underneath it all.
That's the only way.
So if anxiety is the root cause we have to address, the obvious next question is, well, where does it come from? And the book immediately gets into that classic nature versus nurture debate.
Right, and it concludes that anxiety is fundamentally multifactorial. It's a complex mix of our intrinsic wiring and all the external pressures we face.
Let's start with nature, the genetic part.
Yeah, the research here is always evolving, but it definitely points to a biological or a genetic component. For instance, some studies have associated specific genes, sometimes on chromosomes like chromosome 9, with an increased likelihood of developing anxiety.
So your brain chemistry, your basic structure, might just be wired to be a little more reactive than someone else's.
It might be. But, and this is a huge but, that sounds alarming, doesn't it? If you hear that and you know your family has a history of anxiety, you might instantly feel like, oh, well, that's it, I'm doomed.
Yeah, it's in my genes.
That's the important nuance we have to stress here. The science shows that genetics only explains about 26% of the variability in anxiety disorders.
Okay, so that's a relatively small piece of the pie.
Let that figure sink in. 74% is still everything else: environmental, behavioral, experiential. So your genes don't fix your fate, they adjust the probability.
So it's not a fixed sentence.
Not at all. Think of it less like a sentence and more like having a car that's maybe a little easier to stall. You just need to learn how to drive it differently.
And it's so hard to separate those influences anyway, isn't it? I mean, if an anxious parent passes on a gene, they're also probably passing on behavioral patterns.
Of course. They might be overprotective or model chronic worry themselves. It becomes almost impossible to pull apart the genetic inheritance from the behavioral inheritance that shapes all those early experiences.
But it's that huge 74% where we have real power, which brings us to nurture the environmental and lifestyle triggers.
Yes, and we need to start by just defining our terms. The book makes a great distinction. Stress is the external pressure. It exists out in the environment. A deadline, financial problems, a huge pile of emails.
And anxiety is?
Anxiety is the internal experience of that pressure. It's our emotional and physiological response to it. And that depends on our own inner resources and our threshold for coping.
And the book does a great job reminding us that stress itself isn't the enemy. We actually need pressure to grow. They define eustress, which is the good stress.
Right. The pressure that inspires us, keeps us motivated, challenges us to be better. It's that, exhilarating feeling when you finally finish a really demanding project.
But then there's the other side, hypostress, which I think is often overlooked.
Massively. This is the stress that's caused by a lack of stimulation, a lack of challenge, or just chronic boredom. If you're stuck in a repetitive, unfulfilling job, that state of being understimulated is incredibly stressful in its own way.
And it leads to apathy and depression.
For sure. So to flourish, you don't need a stress-free life. You need an optimally suited environment where the pressure is manageable and it feels meaningful.
But when that pressure becomes relentless, when stress becomes chronic, that's when the system starts to break down. The fight or flight response, which is designed for these short, acute threats.
Running from a tiger.
Exactly. It just stays switched on indefinitely.
And that's the essence of chronic anxiety. We're just constantly running on adrenaline. And the research is so clear here, linking major depression and generalized anxiety with traumatic life events in the previous month, bereavement, divorce, being a victim of crime, a financial catastrophe. The system is just overloaded.
And this brings us back to the early years, because the research on childhood trauma is really compelling. It shows how early events can literally prime the nervous system for anxiety later in life.
Yeah, studies have shown for a while now that trauma, abuse, or neglect in childhood is a really powerful predictor of adult mental disorders. For example, childhood abuse can have the effect of sensitizing a person to adult stress.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning their physiological response, their cortisol levels, their heart rate to just standard daily pressure is literally higher and faster than someone who didn't experience that early trauma. Their internal threshold for coping has been permanently lowered.
That makes the whole system incredibly fragile.
Yeah.
But we often just focus on those big T traumas. The book reminds us that our immediate daily environments matter just as much.
Absolutely. And this is a really practical area of intervention. Our physical spaces, our homes, and our offices can just silently feed our anxiety. If you've ever felt calmed by cleaning your kitchen, you intuitively get this. Clutter acts as a subconscious reflection of your own anxiety or your overwhelmed self. Your brain is constantly processing visual input, so a chaotic environment just mirrors and reinforces that internal chaos.
And beyond the obvious mess, there are other managed factors too.
Immensely important. The quality of the lighting, pleasant smells, the colors on the walls, ambient noise. Working under harsh fluorescent lights in a drab room with high-frequency noise is actively stressful. Just improving your lighting and maybe integrating some calming colors, like blues and greens, can subtly lower your daily anxiety levels because you're signaling safety to your nervous system.
And then there are those incredibly subtle daily habits we barely even think about, but which are chemically feeding our anxiety.
Like excessive social media checking.
Yes, that constant novelty loop, the constant comparison, or poor diet and hydration. Your brain can't function optimally if it's running on junk fuel, but maybe the most insidious one is an erratic or poor sleep cycle.
Oh, definitely. Sleep deprivation directly elevates cortisol. It makes your body hyper-alert, twitchy, and just ready to panic. Of all the factors we've discussed, genetics, trauma, environment, these daily habits are by far the easiest for you to start controlling right now.
And this brings us to the bridge between nature and nurture, the place where we have the most control, our mental models.
This is key. You can't change your genetics, and you can only partially control the amount of external stress in your life. But you are fully 100% empowered to change your cognitive style, your mental frames, and your inner dialogue.
I love that old saying. It's not the load, but how you carry it. It speaks directly to this.
It really does. Whether you experience something as stressful or just challenging comes down entirely to your appraisal of that event. Two people can lose the exact same promotion.
One sees it as a catastrophe.
Right. They appraise it as proof that they're fundamentally worthless. The other person appraises it as a clear signal that it's time to move on to a better opportunity. The appraisal causes their wildly different emotional experience, not the situation itself.
And a prime example of this is the locus of control.
Yes. If you consistently operate with an external locus of control, believing your life is determined by luck or fate or what other people do, then every new situation, every change is automatically going to be appraised as a threat.
Because you feel powerless.
Exactly. Which naturally leads to massive anxiety. Conversely, if you cultivate an internal locus of control, believing your efforts and your choices determine your results, that same new situation is appraised as an exciting challenge.
Same event, radically different anxiety level, just based on the mental model you apply.
And that's the actionable focus here. We have the power to change our outlook, our evaluation, our behavior. We have to remember that those mental models are the area where we can generate hope and strengthen our sense of agency.
But if we fail to take charge of those models, if we let overthinking just run unchecked, the consequences spiral out and become devastating. They reinforce the whole cycle.
And this manifests physically, mentally, and socially.
Let's break down the physiological toll first, because I think it's a powerful motivator for change. When that threat system is activated, our body triggers the HPA axis, the fight-or-flight cascade.
In the short term, that means a racing heart, headaches from muscle tension, nausea, dizziness, digestive issues. But when that's chronic, you're just bathing your body in stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline indefinitely.
And that leads to long-term health issues.
Serious ones. Chronic inflammation, cardiovascular disease, a suppressed immune system, hormonal dysregulation. The brain fog and memory issues that overthinkers complain about are often a direct result of chronic stress just eroding your cognitive function.
And the mental and psychological toll.
Profound exhaustion, irritability, that feeling of constantly being on edge, a severe inability to concentrate. You see apathy, depression, lowered confidence, plummeting motivation. Overthinking literally uses up the energy you need for productive action.
And finally, the social consequences are just tragic.
They are. You damage close relationships because you're impatient, your performance at work suffers because your mental resources are always depleted, and eventually you retreat socially. A person trapped in this cycle loses their sense of meaning or joy, and they become incapable of acting with compassion because all their bandwidth is spent fighting that internal storm.
Okay, so we've established the why and the severe consequences of letting that anxiety engine run. Now we shift fully into the practical toolkit. When you're hit by a stressor, that moment of panic, the overwhelming email, the unexpected crisis, you need a clear framework. The book provides the 4 A's of stress management.
Of this, it acts as a structured lifeboat in the storm.
It does. It's a systematic way to regain control and move from that reactive paralysis to a proactive response, no matter what's causing the stress.
And the first A is avoid.
Which is the easiest step, but often the one we overlook the most. It just means walking away from voluntary, unnecessary stress by proactively arranging your life.
Think about it. If your colleague Steve causes you stress every time you have lunch with him because all he does is complain, you avoid that stress by eating at your desk or finding something else to do.
You can say no to excessive demands, you can delegate tasks that drain you, but don't really need your specific skill set.
Or set clear boundaries with people who are stressful. If something is just gobbling up all your time and it's not urgent or a priority, you have to proactively remove it from your life.
Let's use a single scenario to test this out.
Yeah.
Imagine you're stressed because you volunteer on a community planning committee, and the meetings are hostile, long, and emotionally draining, but you feel obligated to go. How would avoid apply there?
Well, if you realize the meetings are the source of the stress, avoidance could mean stepping down entirely if that commitment isn't vital to your core values. Or you could say, I can only attend 2 meetings per month, not 4. You're just proactively creating distance from that draining energy.
Okay, but what if you can't step down? What if it's a necessary project for work? That brings us to the second A, alter.
Alter means changing the situation itself when avoidance isn't possible. You have to recognize that you have agency. You can ask others to change their behavior politely. You can communicate your needs directly using I statements.
So, something like, I feel overwhelmed when the meeting runs over, so I need us to stick to the agenda.
Exactly. So in our hostile committee meeting scenario, instead of just absorbing all that tension, alter would mean politely asking the chairperson to enforce the ground rules, or communicating your need for a fixed agenda and a time limit. You're changing the parameters of the interaction.
You're negotiating for a more manageable reality.
Yes. Now, if you've tried to avoid and you've tried to alter, and the stressor is still there, the committee is still hostile, the deadline is fixed, you move to the third A. Accept.
This one is often confused with just giving up, isn't it? How does the book differentiate between gracefully accepting a stressor and just resigning yourself to a bad situation?
Acceptance doesn't mean you agree with the situation or that you endorse it. It just means you come to terms with the reality of what cannot be changed right now. It involves validating your own emotions. It's okay that I'm frustrated by this committee, and then releasing the energy you've been wasting fighting an immovable fact.
So it's an internal reframing.
It is. Forgiveness in this context is something you do for yourself. You release the stress of resentment and blame toward the other committee members.
So instead of thinking, this committee is going to fail and it's going to ruin my reputation, you reframe it to, this situation is difficult, but I've done my best. This one event doesn't define me. I accept that I can only control my own input, not the final outcome.
Absolutely. It focuses your energy on moving forward, not wrestling with something you can't change. And that leads directly to the fourth and final A, adapt.
Adapt means making lasting internal changes. Changes to your goals, your expectations, your worldview, so you can cope better in the future.
So, if that committee experience was stressful because you have impossibly high standards for teamwork, adaptation means lowering those perfectionistic standards to something more reasonable. It means deliberately practicing optimism about future groups or building a personal mantra you can use.
Like, I will not absorb other people's chaos, that you say to yourself before you walk into the next meeting.
Exactly. You're changing your internal machinery to be more resilient to the stress that's just an inevitable part of public life.
The 4A's provide this beautifully structured response to any stressor. It moves you from feeling helpless to feeling proactive and in control.
And a critical tool for building the self-awareness you need to even use the 4A's is journaling, specifically keeping a stress diary. Overthinking feels so vague and chaotic, like this big cloud of pressure.
And a diary helps you pinpoint concrete triggers and reactions.
It turns that vague overwhelm into actionable, objective data.
But it can't just be a quick vent at the end of the day, right? It needs some structure.
The book emphasizes structure, yes. You record the time and date, a stress rating from 1 to 10, the feeling words or physical symptoms, like a tight chest or frustration, a productivity rating, again 1 to 10.
And the specific event, your response, and the outcome.
Right. It sounds like a lot of data points, but the real power comes in the pattern analysis. After you've kept the diary for a week or two, you review the data like a scientist.
And you ask specific questions.
You ask, what are the most frequent causes of my stress? Do all my stress spikes happen between 2 and 4 p.m.? How does my typical response getting angry or freezing up affect my productivity? You might realize all your high-stress events are related to one specific project or one person, which immediately informs your avoid and alter strategies.
And journaling has so many helpful variations, too. A gratitude journal shifts your focus from what's wrong to what's right. Emotional release journaling is just for dumping all your feelings onto paper to get some distance.
And bullet journaling, with its brief notes and structure, is great for organizing chaos and daily goals, which is immensely helpful for the distracted overthinker.
But when the anxiety is acute and spiraling, when James is paralyzed by the thought about the mole, you need an emergency brake. And this is the perfect time for the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique.
This technique is so powerful because it uses a simple neurological truth. When you're ruminating or panicking, you are out of the moment. You're dwelling on the past or the future what-ifs.
But your body's only ever in one place.
Exactly. The present. So by forcibly pulling your conscious awareness back to your 5 senses, you hijack the brain's focus and you halt that internal anxiety spiral. You give your nervous system a clear, immediate anchor.
So let's practice this for a moment. Listener, when you feel that panic approaching, just stop everything you are doing, take a deep, slow breath, and look around. First, 5 things you can see.
And don't just name them. Look at their texture, their color, the way the light hits them. Look at the shadows, the patterns on the ceiling. You're forcing focused visual attention.
Next, 4 things you can feel or touch. Register the sensations. The weight of your body in the chair. The smooth surface of the table under your hands. The fabric of your shirt against your arm. The temperature of the air on your skin.
Then, 3 things you can hear. Maybe it's your own breath, the distant sound of traffic, the hum of your computer. You have to listen past the noise of your own thoughts and focus on external sounds.
2 things you can smell. The faint scent of paper, the lingering scent of coffee, or the smell of soap on your hands. If you can't smell anything specific, just focus on the clean air entering your nostrils.
And finally, 1 thing you can taste. The residual flavor of your last sip of water, or just dwelling on what your taste buds are sensing right now. The total focus on your senses achieves an immediate distraction. It allows that anxious energy to dissipate because your brain is busy gathering real-time data.
Finally, in this section, we have techniques rooted in narrative control. This is a key psychological concept. The idea is that we construct our lives as stories, and we have the power to rewrite those stories to find healing.
And the major technique here is externalization. You have to separate yourself from the problem. We internalize problems constantly. We say things like, I'm an anxious person.
But the shift is powerful. You are not your problems. You are merely experiencing them. So instead of I am lazy, you say, I am noticing some procrastination tendencies right now.
That distance is crucial. You can write your anxiety down on a piece of paper and then physically throw it away, visually separating yourself from the stressor.
I love the idea of giving your inner critic a really boring name like Bob the Worrier, or as the book suggests, boring old Fred. So when that voice pipes up with judgment, you're going to fail that presentation. You recognize it not as a core truth, but as this separate, annoying entity.
Oh, there goes Fred again.
Exactly. It immediately strips the power away from that voice.
And related to this is deconstruction. Overthinking thrives in chaos and confusion where everything feels like it's happening all at once. Deconstruction is the process of breaking that big, overwhelming problem down into smaller, sequential steps. You force a narrative structure onto the chaos.
So if you're catastrophizing about what might happen with your career next year, you set that aside and you ask, what is the single most important thing I can do right now to move forward? It organizes your attention and makes the monster feel small again.
You can also use deconstruction to chart your past history, to look for themes of growth and progress. If you're cringing over a past humiliation, you can reframe the story to see that embarrassment not as a fixed failure, but as proof that you're now a more mature person who learned a valuable lesson.
You see a narrative of progress, not a fixed failure.
Exactly.
We shift now from immediate crisis management to building a life structure that prevents the spiral from even starting. For the overthinker, good time management is absolutely the same as good stress management. And this starts with a crucial mindset shift, critiquing the time martyr tendency.
The time martyr is someone who believes their worth is tied directly to their busyness. They prioritize activities that actually worsen their mood and anxiety. They give all their time to demanding work and only give the crumbs of their time and energy to relationships, rest, and enjoyment.
They see relaxation as a luxury, not a necessity.
Right. But the shift has to be to see relaxation, self-care, and fun as important resources that are worthy of proactive scheduling, not just leftovers. The book argues that time management is fundamentally about structuring the architecture of your life so that your schedule reflects your core values.
And the framework for this is really concrete. Step 1. Decide on your 3 main values, say family, financial stability, and intellectual growth. Step 2. Log your time meticulously for a week.
Step 3. Analyze the data. Does your time usage actually reflect those values? If family is a core value, but you only spend 3 hours of focused time with them all week, there's a huge misalignment.
And then step 4 is to restructure your schedule to align, and step 5 is to observe and adjust. Without this value-driven architecture, you're just busy, not productive, and that anxiety of misalignment will just keep compounding.
And that structure is so critical because different people fail at time management for wildly different reasons. The book details several time management personas, and each one needs a unique approach to stop overthinking.
Let's run through a few. The time martyr, as we just mentioned, takes on way too much. They need strict schedules and limits on their main tasks, maybe only 3 high-priority tasks per day. The procrastinator delays action until it's a crisis.
They need small, immediate tasks that build momentum, coupled with consistent rewards for hitting mini milestones.
The distractor is easily derailed by, shiny objects or minor demands. They need firmer boundaries, an optimized work environment, and proactive scheduling of focused work. Then there's the underestimator.
The one who's too optimistic about how long things take.
Yeah.
They have to build ample buffer time into their projects and start saying no to late-day requests.
And critically, the firefighter, who is always in reactive crisis mode, only responding to urgent demands.
They need to learn to delegate and to distinguish between tasks that are urgent and tasks that are truly important for their long-term goals.
And finally, the perfectionist, who won't finish because nothing is ever good enough.
They need boundary setting, a fixed time limit on any task-realistic planning, and, crucially, an acceptance of good enough outcomes.
That's a really tough ask for a perfectionist, though. I mean, isn't good enough inherently risky in a high-stakes professional environment? How does the book suggest you ensure that standard doesn't drop too far?
Well, that's where the structure of the planning comes in. The book emphasizes that good enough must still meet the required standard. The problem for the perfectionist isn't the quality itself. It's the time spent agonizing over that final 5% of polish, which gives you almost no benefit.
So by setting a fixed deadline...
By setting a fixed deadline and sticking to it, the perfectionist is forced to triage their efforts. They optimize for impact rather than minute detail, which reduces the anxiety of that endless pursuit of flawlessness.
Now let's look at specific processing techniques. Alan's input processing technique is brilliant for streamlining responses to the endless daily stimuli emails, Slack messages, social media alerts that cause so much decision stress.
Every single input has to be immediately observed and a decision has to be made. Do I need to act on this? If the answer is no, you ignore it or defer it. If yes, you complete the urgent task immediately if it takes less than 2 minutes.
And here's the key step to prevent that accumulation anxiety.
Right. If the action is complex or for later, you must immediately schedule a specific time and reminder for it and then completely forget about it. The stress comes from letting all those inputs sit in your head, just nagging at your subconscious. By processing immediately and scheduling, you free up massive amounts of mental energy.
And that ties right into Eisenhower's urgent important method. This is essential for cutting through distraction, and it's perfect for firefighters or anyone who feels overwhelmed by priorities. It forces you to sort tasks into one of 4 quadrants.
Quadrant 1 is important and urgent. These are your crises, emergencies, priority deadlines. These must be done immediately. You should have limited time here. Otherwise, you're a firefighter.
Quadrant 2 is important, but not urgent. This is the heart of your life architecture. Your long-term goals, relationship maintenance, strategic planning, health, exercise.
These tasks have to be decided on and scheduled. You have to protect this quadrant fiercely because it's essential for your long-term satisfaction and reducing future urgency.
Quadrant 3 is not important, but urgent. These are the distractions, often other people's emergencies or things that demand immediate action but don't bring you closer to your goals.
Like many meeting requests or unnecessary commitments, these should be delegated or rescheduled.
And finally, Quadrant 4, not important and not urgent. Junk media, pointless scrolling, time wasters.
These should just be deleted, ignored entirely, with efforts made to reduce how often they even appear. This whole matrix ensures you prioritize outcomes that align with your values, rather than just reacting to the loudest noise.
And to tie all this structure together, you need a roadmap. That's why setting SMART goals is so crucial for cutting through the chaos. The vaguer your goal is, the more potential there is for anxiety and overthinking paralysis, because the path forward is just so ambiguous.
So S is for specific, clear details, what exactly will happen, where, with whom. M is for measurable, quantified results. How will you know when you've reached the goal?
A is for attainable. It has to be realistic and possible for you in your situation. It should challenge you, but if it's outlandish, you're just setting yourself up for failure, which feeds anxiety.
R is for relevant. Does this goal fit with your broader core values and your long-term vision? And T is for time-bound. You need a deadline or a time limit.
Let's take the vague goal, I want to become healthier. A SMART version would be, I'll eat at least 5 servings of different fruits and vegetables daily, with an 80-gram minimum serving size to improve my general diet, and I will maintain this daily habit every day for the remainder of this month.
Now you have clear success criteria, a defined effort, and a fixed end date. There's no room for overthinking there.
We can also look at visual systems for improving workflow. Kanban is a Japanese method for improving efficiency through small, cumulative baby steps, focusing on the flow of work.
Its core principles are visualize the flow. So you use a board with columns like to do, in progress, done. Avoid works in progress, so no multitasking, focus on one thing to completion. Manage the flow by finding the time-wasting gaps, like waiting for approvals, and set up feedback loops so you're adjusting based on measurable data.
The grocery shopping example is fantastic for Kanban. If you realize your process is chaotic, you might reorganize your kitchen based on food expiry dates. That's visualizing the flow. You focus on using only the oldest food first, avoiding works in progress. And you streamline your weekly shopping list to reflect only what you actually need, which reduces waste and the stress of decision fatigue.
And finally, within that structure, we use time blocking. This means dedicating fixed, uninterrupted blocks of time to a single task to encourage deep work. This is essential for controlling those reactive, chaotic days.
You prioritize your non-negotiable routines, first morning and evening routines, exercise, and then you block out 90-minute segments for your urgent and important deep work during your peak energy hours.
And the shallow work, like emails, notifications, or those quadrant 3 tasks, only get scheduled during designated, less productive times. This reduces context switching, cuts down on time waste, and significantly reduces the decision fatigue that feeds that overthinking cycle.
Okay, if structuring your life prevents anxiety, then proactively practicing relaxation ensures you have the internal resources to handle the stressors that inevitably slip through.
And relaxation is a skill. It has to be practiced deliberately. It's not something you can just rely on to happen. The physiological benefits are not just feeling good either. They include measurable changes.
Like a lower heart rate and blood pressure, improved digestion.
A decrease in stress hormones, increased concentration, better quality sleep. These techniques work because they pull your conscious awareness back into your present body, away from the storm of thoughts.
Let's start with autogenic training. It literally means self-generated calm. It was developed in the 1920s as a systematic way to induce calm states by deliberately relaxing the central nervous system.
So instead of being reactive to your body's arousal, you learn to control and direct it. The practice involves systematically guiding your awareness onto 6 specific physiological sensations or lessons while you're lying down comfortably.
And you repeat verbal cues, usually 6 times each, focusing your mental energy inward.
The progression is fascinating because it follows the body's natural response to relaxation. You start with a sense of heaviness in your limbs. My right arm is heavy, which induces muscle relaxation. Then you move to warmth. My left arm is warm, which encourages increased blood flow.
And you then move to a focused awareness of a calm and regular heartbeat, followed by a calm and regular breath.
Next, you focus on relaxed abdominal sensations, a sense of warmth in the solar plexus, and finally, the feeling of coolness on the forehead.
The goal here is pretty profound. You are gaining conscious control over internal biological processes, heart rate, temperature, muscle tension, that are usually beyond your conscious influence.
Over time, just thinking the cue, my arm is warm, can trigger a profound relaxation response. However, a quick caution from the book. Because this can shift your blood pressure and heart rate, anyone with diabetes or heart conditions should consult a doctor before making this a regular practice.
That sounds incredibly powerful for the overthinker who often feels like their body is reacting against them. The next tool is maybe a bit more accessible: guided imagery and visualization.
The mind is a machine. I mean, if your brain can make you stress out and raise your heart rate just by imagining a bad scenario, it can absolutely make you relax by imagining a peaceful one. The classic example is imagining a sour lemon.
Your mouth instantly waters.
Exactly. It shows the power of that mind-body link. So we use the mind to steer the mental machine toward a destination that calms and balances us.
So how do we make the visualization effective? You have to engage all 5 senses in vivid detail. You close your eyes and you choose a deeply relaxing location, a serene beach, a silent forest, a beautiful garden, and you immerse yourself. What does the air smell like? What's the texture of the sand or grass under your feet? What sounds do you hear? The wind, the birds, the waves. What colors dominate your vision?
The goal is to reorient your awareness away from the stressful thoughts and anchor it to this peaceful internal place. And with practice, you're training a quick cue, a mental shortcut to access that happy place and initiate a relaxation response immediately.
Finally, we have progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR. This is rooted in the idea from the 1930s that physical relaxation precedes and enables mental relaxation. Since stress hormones cause muscle tension creating aches, tension headaches, back pain addressing the physical tension first helps release the mental tension.
And the technique is simple but kind of counterintuitive. You deliberately tense a specific muscle group for 5 to 10 seconds on an inhale, and then you fully and suddenly release the tension on the exhale. And that contrast between the intense tension and the subsequent relaxation helps your body register what true relaxation actually feels like.
And we move systematically through the body. You start with the extremities, clench your toes and feet, then release. Then move to your legs, your stomach, your chest, your shoulders, shrug them up to your ears, then release. Then your hands, and finally your face. Wrinkle your forehead, squeeze your eyes shut, not your stomach, and then release.
By practicing this regularly, you gain an immediate awareness of where stress accumulates in your body. Maybe it's always in your jaw or your neck, and you learn to consciously intervene and release that specific tension throughout the day. Regular practice can genuinely improve your sleep quality and decrease physical symptoms of stress, like back pain or migraines.
Okay, we've addressed the life structure and physical mastery. Now we tackle the source of the noise itself, the content of the mind. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, provides the ultimate toolkit here. It's rooted in the powerful premise that our thoughts influence how we see the world, which creates our emotions, which then shape our behavior.
And if you successfully change the thought, the emotion and the subsequent behavior will follow.
Think of it this way. The same external failure is experienced wildly differently depending on the cognitive filter you apply. If your root thought filter is, any failure is proof that I am fundamentally flawed, you're going to feel shame and paralysis.
But if your thought filter is, failure is a chance to gather data and grow stronger, you feel empowered and motivated. The event didn't change at all, the thought did.
So to change the filter, we first have to identify the flaws in the glass. These are the cognitive distortions, the systematic errors in thinking that lead to negative self-talk and crippling anxiety.
One of the most common is all or nothing thinking or black and white thinking. Everything is either a complete success or a total failure, right or wrong, never or absolutely.
It just destroys all nuance and traps you in these cycles of extreme self-judgment.
And related to that is overgeneralization. That's making sweeping, definitive statements based on minimal, isolated data. I messed up that one report, therefore I am terrible at my job and I ruin everything I touch. The stakes instantly become impossibly high.
We also fall into flawed causality a lot. Internalizing, which is taking undue self-blame, my spouse left because I am unlovable, versus externalizing, which is shifting all the blame to others.
It's not my fault the project failed, the team is too incompetent. Both of those remove your agency from where it actually lies, and they just increase your sense of helplessness.
My favorite one to catch is favoring the negative, discounting the positive. You see one small failure in 100 successful tasks as proof of your worthlessness, or you view genuine success as just pure, unrepeatable luck.
You completely ignore the 99 successes because your core belief dictates that things will always be bad.
And perhaps the most damaging distortion for the overthinker is emotional reasoning. Believing something is true simply because you feel it's true.
I feel a sense of intense impending doom. Therefore, something terrible must be guaranteed to happen today. The feeling is treated as an objective fact, even when there is zero evidence to support it. We have to learn to catch these automatic thoughts and hold them up to scrutiny.
And to neutrally examine these distortions, we use the bedrock technique of CDT, cognitive restructuring via the dysfunctional thought record, or DTR. This is a structured logging exercise where you act like a forensic scientist on your own mind.
It's structured using specific columns. Let's walk through a scenario. Imagine the situation is, you delivered a presentation at work and one senior colleague seemed distracted and left early.
Okay, the next column is the automatic thoughts and your belief level in them. So my automatic thought might be, that colleague must have hated my presentation and thinks I'm incompetent, and my belief level is, say, 90%.
The next column is emotions and their intensity percentage. Based on that thought, you feel fear at 80% and shame at 60%.
Now comes the restructuring. We stop the negative emotion. We identify the distortion emotional reasoning, catastrophizing, and we look for evidence. What evidence supports this thought? Well, only that the colleague left early.
And what evidence contradicts it? Well, the colleague emailed me yesterday saying they enjoyed my previous work. I received a raise last month. 3 other people complimented the presentation.
Then we generate the alternative response. We use those questions to challenge that 90% belief. An alternative thought could be, the colleague leaving early had nothing to do with me. They might have had an emergency call or simply needed to get to their next meeting. My presentation was well prepared and I have evidence of past success.
And the final column is the outcome. If you internalize that alternative thought, your fear drops from 80% to maybe 30%, and your shame might drop to 5%. You haven't eliminated the anxiety, but you've made it manageable and realistic, and you've stopped the overthinking spiral before it starts. The DTR forces you to use logic rather than catastrophic emotion.
That process works for most rational arguments. But sometimes, a deeply ingrained core belief is so stubborn that a rational argument just isn't enough to dislodge it.
In these cases, we need behavioral experiments. You have to test the core belief using practical, real-world action.
So the first type is direct hypothesis testing. If your core belief is, I am socially inept and everyone finds me boring, you form a testable hypothesis. If I start a conversation with 3 new people this week, they will not run away screaming.
And then you run the experiment. You make small talk with 3 people, the barista, a new coworker, your neighbor. You analyze the results. If the feared outcome, running away screaming, never happens, you gather hard data that contradicts the belief. It forces a rational update to your core belief that you are, in fact, capable of normal social interaction.
The second type is survey experiments. This is used for those intrusive, often embarrassing thoughts that can't really be tested physically, like feels about being a bad parent or being inherently defective.
By looking for accounts of similar fears online, say searching for parental worry about being good enough or asking trusted, non-judgmental sources about their own anxious thoughts, you achieve normalization. You realize that this intrusive thought is a common part of being human, not a sign of your own unique depravity, and that reduces its intensity immediately.
And the third type is discovery experiments. These are used for those deeply internalized, non-rationalized core fears, like that pervasive feeling that you're fundamentally damaged.
The experiment is simple but terrifying. You act as if the fear isn't true for a fixed period of time. What would happen if I acted as if I wasn't damaged for the next 24 hours? You test the world's reaction to your changed behavior. You might find that your feared outcome never happens, or that even if you make a mistake, people react with compassion, which fundamentally chips away at that core belief of being defective.
And finally, we have to address cleaning up self-talk. That negative self-talk, "you're such a loser, I knew that wouldn't work," is the constant running commentary that reinforces the core maladaptive belief, and it stems directly from low self-esteem.
The book stresses that instead of fighting every single negative statement as it arises, which is exhausting, you use self-scripting. You deliberately create an encouraging, positive way of talking to yourself to counter the negative narrative. You write this script when you're calm and you practice it regularly. You are prepared, you are capable, minor setbacks are normal. So that when a stressful moment arrives, that positive, supportive script kicks in automatically.
You take conscious control of your inner voice, and you replace Fred the critic with a rational coach.
And having tackled the external structure, the physical body, and the thought patterns, we arrive at the highest level of mastery, the non-anxious attitude. These are the fundamental mindset shifts of a resilient person who has fundamentally changed their approach to life. The book presents these as a powerful 5-point manifesto.
Attitude 1. Focus on what you can control, not on what you can't.
Yeah.
This is stoic wisdom applied to the modern overthinker. Overthinking thrives on feeling powerless by directing energy toward immovable obstacles. The graceful acceptance of what is outside your power frees up enormous energy.
Imagine you're in a minor car accident, and the other driver is aggressive, yelling insults, denying fault. You cannot control their anger or their dishonesty. Focusing your energy there is pointless and stressful.
So the resilient attitude directs energy only toward practical action.
Exchanging insurance details, calling the police, refusing to internalize the external chaos or the insult. Your reaction is the only thing you own in that moment.
Attitude 2. Focus on what you can do, not on what you can't. Anxiety focuses on impossibility and failure. Action is the clarifying agent. If your primary goal to open a bar fails because the liquor license fell through, dwelling on that failure is paralyzing.
The resilient attitude immediately pivots and asks, what can I do right now with the resources and the location I have? Perhaps you open a high-end gourmet cafe instead, leveraging the location and staff differently. Adversity becomes opportunity purely through a change in perspective and a commitment to movement.
Attitude 3. Focus on what you have, not on what you don't have. This is about priming your mind for solutions, for resources, for gratitude. Contentment comes from appreciating your present inventory, not mourning the absent one.
The book's example of the ruined birthday cake is perfect. Dwelling on the missing perfect cake focuses on lack. The resourceful parent focuses on what they do have, a watermelon, some candy, candles, and creates a fun, improvised solution. The focus on available resources makes the solution visible.
Attitude 4. Focus on the present, not the past or the future. This is the core spiritual practice for the overthinker. Anxiety lives in regret, which is the past, or conjecture, which is the future. Awareness and useful action reside only in the present moment.
If someone starts a beautiful, positive new romance, but they're constantly mourning past relationship regrets, they're allowing the ghosts of the past to taint the current good. They are failing to appreciate the now. That constant, gentle pulling of awareness back to the immediacy of the present moment is where joy and effectiveness reside.
And attitude 5. Focus on what you need, not what you want. Overthinking often stems from endless choice paralysis, trying to optimize all these optional extras or wants.
The key is simplifying decisions by distinguishing fundamental necessities from those optional extras. The house hunter who starts by looking at every single property available is paralyzed. The house hunter who starts by drawing up a non-negotiable list of 3 needs, it must be under a certain price, must have 3 bathrooms, must have a garden, cuts through the clutter of wants and regains focus, making the decision process efficient and anxiety-free.
The culmination of all these techniques is the ultimate control mechanism, emotional regulation via opposite action.
Regulation starts with radical acceptance, just sitting with the fearful emotion without judgment. You allow the emotion to exist, recognizing it's a normal human response. But acceptance does not mean permission to let that emotion dictate your behavior.
So you identify the emotion, say intense rage after an interaction, and the resulting unhealthy behavior it dictates, like screaming, retribution, or avoidance. And then you commit to the opposite behavior for a fixed amount of time.
If you feel intense rage, you commit to responding with calmness, with listening, with de-escalation for just 10 minutes. The power lies in the observation. That initial flush of anger dissipates, leading to genuine relief and calm. You realize you didn't have to let the emotion dictate your actions.
You prove that fear or anger can ride in the car with you.
But you are the one in the driver's seat. And that's the ultimate goal. Realizing that you are in control of your response regardless of the stimulus.
What a comprehensive toolkit. We've navigated this huge journey from identifying overthinking as a symptom of anxiety to diagnosing its origins in genetics and lifestyle, and through the three major pillars of lasting relief: changing our relationship with stressors, the 4As, time management, mastering our body, PMR, autogenic training, and finally, rewiring our mind, CBT, the Attitude Manifesto. The depth of actionable advice here is fantastic for anyone struggling with that persistent mental clutter.
Absolutely. The core message is profoundly empowering. Stress is a fact of life, but overthinking is optional. The process of cultivating resilience and building this new life architecture requires dedication and practice, but every single technique we discussed today places you, the listener, firmly in the driver's seat. You are fully empowered to achieve lasting resilience and quiet mastery over your own mind.
For you, the listener, who may have recognized several cognitive distortions today, whether it was all-or-nothing thinking, emotional reasoning, or catastrophizing, here's a final thought for you to explore this week. Don't try to change it yet. That just adds more pressure.
Instead, for the rest of this week, pick the one distortion you use most frequently and simply write down every single time you recognize yourself using it. The act of noticing, of observing your own frequency without judgment, is the first and most powerful step towards stopping this spiral. Start your journey to quiet mastery just by looking.